When you write in comment on an e-commerce platform like Amazon, you are activating sentiment analysis agents. Sentiment analysis takes text such as customer reviews and predicts sentiments such as positive, negative, or neutral. I'll show you on how to build sentiment analysis agents. I'll be using LangGraph, which is an agentic AI framework. I'll be also using OpenAI large language model. We'll take a table which has got customer reviews from Amazon, and these reviews are expressed in natural language and they are completely unstructured text. Our sentiment analysis agent will predict the sentiment for each review such as positive, negative, or neutral. Now let us jump to the Python Jupyter notebook. We'll first start by importing Python package LangGraph packages as well as packages which are specific to OpenAI. Let me first start by reading this Amazon review data which is available in a data frame. We will use an OpenAI model GPT 3.5 Turbo. And let me first start by explaining the overall architecture which is created using LangGraph. In LangGraph, an agent is represented as a graph, and there are two important nodes of the graph, a chatbot and a tool. Tools are basically functions, and here I'll use a tool to calculate the sentiment analysis. The chatbot takes the user query such as make a sentiment analysis of a review. This chatbot will then pass the query as well as the definition of all the available tools to OpenAI large language model. The large language model will come back with a response based on the query and select the most appropriate tool, which is the sentiment analysis. Now based on this response, the sentiment tool will be called. The data frame will be passed to the tool as a runnable configuration. The sentiment analysis tool will send each and every review to the large language model to calculate the sentiment. And the result will be a data frame with the sentiment. Now this resulting data frame is also called as tool output, and it is also called as an artifact. In addition, there will be also a response message which will indicate that the sentiment analysis tool has completed successfully. Now this response will go back to the chatbot node. It will then determine that there are no more actions which are needed and the agent will end its work. Now let me show you the details behind this sentiment analysis tool. In order to calculate the sentiment analysis for each and every line in the data, we will need a lambda function for sentiment analysis. Now this lambda function means that the function will execute for each and every line. Now this function will take the review, it will send it to OpenAI large language model along with the prompt, and the OpenAI LLM will then predict the sentiment of the review as well as the probability. The sentiment will be either positive, negative, or neutral. Now let us see this sentiment analysis function. We'll first create an OpenAI client. We need to then write a system prompt which will give instructions to OpenAI on how to calculate the sentiment. We will say that you are an AI assistant that reviews text and identifies sentiment as well as probability of the sentiment. The sentiment is either positive, neutral, or negative. And the probability of the sentiment is between 0 and 1. Next, we will create a user prompt, and here we can say that please give me the sentiment and the probability of the text. And we will replace the placeholder text underscore data with the actual review text for each and every record. We will then create a message which has got both the system prompt as well as the user prompt. We will then pass the message to the OpenAI large language model. The result is going to be stored in a response variable. We will need to do some processing of the response. For example, convert lowercase values of sentiment to uppercase values. As well as we also need to convert the probability values into numerical values. Now the function will return back the sentiment as well as the probability of the sentiment. Now we are all set to use this lambda function in the sentiment analysis tool. The sentiment analysis tool takes two inputs. The first is a user query such as make sentiment analysis of a review, and it will take input as a data frame which is passed as a runnable configuration by LangGraph. The tool will extract the column mentioned in the user query. So here it will extract the column review from the user query. We will then pass the data frame and the name of the column to the lambda function. The lambda function will return back the data frame with sentiment analysis. Now this resulting data frame is also called as an artifact. In addition, we will also send a response that the sentiment analysis is done. Now let us look at the tool. We have to mention that this is a tool at the beginning of the function, as well as we also have to indicate that this tool will return a response as well as an artifact. We also need to give a nice description of the tool as well as the description of the input. So this will help LangGraph agent to understand the purpose of the tool. The tool will receive the data frame as a runnable configuration. The input column name will be available in the X. We can then call our lambda function to get the sentiment analysis. We then return back the resulting data frame as a tool output along with the response message. Now let us create the LangGraph agent, which will use this sentiment analysis tool. We first need to define a state which will have all the messages. We will also define the large language model which will be used by the chatbot node. We will define a list which will have this sentiment analysis tool, and we need to bind this large language model to the tool. We can also define a memory so that the chatbot can remember the previous conversation. Here we define the chatbot node. We will add the chatbot node to the graph. We can then define the tool node and add it also to the graph. We can then add all the edges between all the different nodes. Now you can display the graph, and this is similar to what I have shown you earlier. Now let us write our user queries such as give me the sentiment analysis of the review column in the data frame. We can invoke the graph to execute the agent by passing the user query as a message as well as the data frame as a runnable configuration. The output of the agent execution is going to be stored in a result variable. The result is basically a list of messages, and there are three types of messages. The first is a human message, which is the user query which we have given. The second is an AI message, which is the message from the chatbot. It will indicate which tool was selected, which in our case is the sentiment analysis. And the third is the tool message, which will have the resulting data frame as an artifact. We can loop over the result to collect all the different type of messages. Here we can see the human message, which is the user query. And here is the AI message, which gives an overview of the results. And then we can see a tool message output which has got the data frame. It has got the sentiment predicted for each and every review along with its probability. We can also plot a visualization which gives a nice summary of sentiment analysis. So we have built a sentiment analysis agent with LangGraph as well as OpenAI large language model. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing to this channel.